So, Pingle, I apologize, but we're going to come back to the question which I just asked you. And
Right.
despite my weird introduction, which you guys have now unfortunately not heard, and the weird joke which I cracked about UFOs, which also most of you have not heard, we're just going to jump right into the main stuff now. So, Pingle, my question to
Sure.
you was, you have challenged the state vape ban, right? You've challenged the state vape bans in the past, and there had been favorable responses in some of the courts too. But the central government then introduced the legislation to ban. Do you think this ban can also be challenged, and what would be the pros and cons in terms of the outcomes? Now, you would already answer, but I'm unfortunately going to ask you to answer it all over again because I don't think our audience has heard it.
No, right. So, see, first and foremost, most of the states brought out notifications under existing statutes to ban it. So, one could question whether they had powers under those statutes or those legislative provisions to come out with those notifications. That was the first thing. Second was, in many of those places, there was not enough distinction made on the issue of usage. Now, where the central government played it smart was they kept out usage. So they made the ban a commercial ban, which is they banned production, they banned manufacturing, they banned sale, they banned distribution, and they banned bulk storage. Uh, Not that they use the word bulk, but the way they frame it is storage for sale, storage for distribution. So essentially, that would mean bulk storage. They have not, in their statute, really gone after the individual user. So a possession of a vaping device or use of a vaping device is not per se an offense under the law. That changes a lot of things because now we're only left with challenging it mostly under fundamental right to trade, which is not an absolute fundamental right because under Article 19, there are a lot of restrictions. And when you read that with directive principles of state policy, which actually sort of urges and guides the state on making policies, and here by state, I mean the state of India, the Union of India, on making policies which are in favor of health, the government's stance becomes health related, and they say that, look, we can ban anything, prohibit anything with relation to something which we believe, in our opinion, in our understanding, is harmful to our subjects, to our citizens. Having said that, I still believe there is a room to argue on dignity. There is a room to argue on choice. There are judgments of the Supreme Court on other matters where right to choose has been held as fundamental, particularly when talking on issues related to privacy, issues related to seeking euthanasia. On various such topics, the Supreme Court have spoken lucidly and about uh, the right to choose and the liberty that the Constitution provides the individual citizen on that topic. But the most important argument that I still believe exists, and that is where the science comes in, is that if this is even 1% less harmful than smoking and is likely smoking a cigarette or a traditional nicotine device, like a bidi, and it is likely to help in getting out of those habits or eventually reduce those habits in some kind of a mechanism, some kind of a prescribed manner. In that case, this is something which is banning this amounts to taking away our access to it. Now, when you take away access, you are taking away my ability to access my right to dignity. And this is the one place, I think, because the Constitution guarantees right to human life with human dignity. And that argument becomes very serious. The problem there is that the scientific studies can be of varied nature, and we can have a set of scientific studies in various countries taking one side, but we will always have studies on the other side. And there the subjectivity kicks in. That's one. But my sense, and this is just my reading, is fundamentally, and I'm not a scientist, so I'll put the disclaimer. Fundamentally, I think there is a general consensus that while these products don't add to any harm, it certainly does exclude some of the harms that a traditional cigarette smoking, for example, brings on. For example, tar. Tar cannot be created through these products.
Right.
One of the issues that you will notice, and I'm sure Samrat will, because he has been and in the advocacy of this, will come in on this, is that one of the arguments, one of the favorite arguments has been that this will become a gateway product. This will become the gateway product to smoking. And I don't think that is a very fair call, because uh, vaping is not exactly a complete mimicking of the smoking experience. It's slightly different. And it is more of a tool in the hands of the smoker to get out of smoking cigarettes and beads. So,
Correct.
unfortunately, one thing all of us should remember, and you will see this happening a lot increasingly, is that the Supreme Court and the judiciary will practice restraint when it comes to intervening in executive policy decisions of the state. And that is a well known doctrine of judicial restraint. And lately, we have seen the Supreme Court use that. They've used that in their demonetization judgment, they've used it during Aadhaar judgment. So they have been referring to this doctrine. It is not necessarily the wrong thing to do, because the doctrine is well respected globally across the civilized judicial world. And that is where I feel that there is a possibility that any challenge, any constitutional challenge, will finally be answered with this doctrine of judicial restraint, saying we will not unnecessarily, unless faced with an overwhelming position on the other side, intervene in an executive policy decision.
Right. So that can be a like a dead end kind of a scenario for
That's
us.
right.
But
There's a
otherwise,
real possibility.
there's hope. Great. But moving along, since we are short on time and we're running a little late, I'm going to keep these questions quick now. And Dr. Farooq, if I'll ask you the next question. The ban on carrying vapes through flights has been inconveniencing thousands of vapers, right? It's a very nonsensical, stupid thing to do. When you say that you can't sell the product, but you can use the product, it itself is stupid to have such a ban. But then when you allow people to use this product, but you don't let them carry it on flights, that's extremely nonsensical. Like every time I'm traveling, I have to leave my vape, and wherever I go, then I'll end up smoking, right? So you have led a court challenge in this regard. Can you share some insights on how it went, what's happening about it?
Yes, see, you have rightly put forth that it is a completely nonsensical sort of thing. And it is beyond reasonable comprehension to understand, much less to appreciate that what would have been the reason for the concerned authorities to ban this particular thing that you can't travel with e-cigarettes. Now, the basic logic which they give is that it may explode. That's how, because before the Honorable High Court of Delhi, in one of the petitions which we have challenged on issue of the constitutionality of that AFSEC order, under strength of which, as of now, this ban is being imposed. So they have said in the reply being filed by the Union of India that it is an hazard. Interestingly, the ban on commercial sale, marketing, storage, etc., as Pingal, my colleague, has been discussing about, is not a criteria for banning that on the aircraft, for a simple reason that they can't take these two contradictory stand, though I was expecting them to take even this stand. However, now they say that it may explode. Now, going by that logic, even any mobile phone which you carry, power bank, you would have been reminded of, don't carry power bank, any battery operated device in your check-in luggage. Make sure that you carry only in your, in your cabin luggage and all that. So mobile, laptop, or any electronic gadget, even these days smartwatches, everything is battery controlled. Same applies to the e-cigarettes or the devices, vaping devices, but they have done so. Now, we have challenged this. There are two addendums to that AFSEC order. first and then second, there are addendums to this, under strength of which. So earlier, the important part is that on earlier occasion, am I audible?
Yes, yes, you are audible. Please carry
So
on.
the interesting part of this story is that on earlier occasion, when vapers were being confronted with this very unpleasant situation, that their vaping devices were being confiscated at the security, at that time they were not even disclosing under strength of which regulation, which law they are doing so. So if you recall 2-3 years back, if I am not mistaken, I think Samrat will confirm this. One of the vapor at Mumbai airport, when he insisted, he was shown some paper, but he was not allowed to click a photograph when he requested for that. So we did some research, we filed some RTIs and etc. And then we came to know that the government, the concerned department of the government has taken this call that they won't allow it on pretext of that it may explode. Now, the view of the High Court, if you see the second order, because on first date, the Honorable High Court had not issued the notice. But on the second date, when it was argued on the admission stage itself, the Honorable High Court goes on to record that this issue needs examination, because we have said so. Then Health Minister, and on the floor of the Parliament, Temple of Democracy, goes on to say that is being live tweeted by the government handles, that personal uses and consumption is not banned. So now when I am using, suppose I am vaping, I'm not buying, I'm not purchasing, I may be importing, I may be asking my friend to bring it from US or wherever this is permissible. And now I want to travel from Mumbai to Delhi, and on the airport you confiscate it. So I don't understand. I really die sometimes 1,000 times as to what they think and as to what they plan, what they implement. But we are very optimistic that the high and though we cannot go on a speculative journey, but I am very optimistic personally that this AFSIC order, under the strength of which they confiscate your devices at the airport, will sooner or later will be quashed. I'm optimistic.
Thank you,
Right,
Farooq.
because
That is very heartening to know, because this flight ban is inconveniencing a lot of people.
No,
And a
no,
lot of
it is
people are not
actually,
even aware of the ban. Because
yes,
see,
yes,
most people who use vaping devices have come to understand that, okay, the use is not banned. And then they land up in the airport and then they get treated like criminals, as if they have, like tried to smuggle some gun or, something through the flight. They are made to stand aside, made to feel as if they have done something wrong or illegal. So this is directly criminalization of people, in my view, of for just trying to make a healthier choice. And I don't see how that should stand in any court. And if the court truly understands what is happening there, then I am sure that no judge will allow it. Uh, yeah.
this I just just to supplement this, this direction, this addendum to that AFSIC order, forget inconvenience to let us take on a test on a different pedestal. Forget the inconvenience. All right, we are subjects, we are nobody, and we have no rights. All right, assuming that. Now, but can a government department or authority go beyond what has been said on the floor of the parliament? We have the principle of collective responsibility in our parliamentary mechanism. When a minister says something on the floor of the parliament, it is the voice of the government. So the minister says something else, you do something else, and who are the ultimate sufferers? So if I am a vapor, if I have tried, that's my choice. As Pinkel has said, you might agree or you might not agree. The irony is that you can go and buy a cigarette, right? But you cannot buy, though it is even that act itself is a knee-jerk reaction in my respectful submission, right? Though the parliament has passed in its own wisdom, but that does not deprive you, me, and any other citizen of this country to say what is, call a spade, that this is not something which has been done with, reasonable mind and application. Having said that, but though it is a law of the land, we have to follow that. There is no denying of the fact unless the court declares that law as an ultra virus. But as of now, even see, please understand. Now, suppose that I am a vapor, I want to vape. Now, I don't have a choice to buy this in India for a simple reason that manufacturing, trading, import, export, sale, possession, etc. is banned by virtue of the said act. Now, what I will do, if I'm with connections, I may ask some of my friend coming from US, please bring some vapes for me, all right. But the other side, the story is very bad, and we must realize this. This gives scope of black marketing. This gives scopes of counterfeited product. So if a vapor is using a product under the guise of some imported product or some regulated product by, in different jurisdiction, no, we don't know what we are using. I don't know what type of logic is this. Really, this is something, which is beyond reasonable comprehension to understand. This is.
Farooq will come to that. I think, there are some specific questions on that. I had a very, since we are on the topic of airport seizures, I had a very focused question for you. So, if I recall that in one of the hearings, in the earlier hearings in this, and since it was live, we could also watch it. The government representative, and I believe it was the additional solicitor general, he came and said, okay, it is not banned. We agree that personal use and possession is not banned. So vapers can either courier their devices to their destinations, or they can request the CSIF to deposit it in the lost and found, which they can recover later. Now, my question is, can vapers, sort of demand that CSIF deposit it so that they can find some way to recover their devices? Because right now what is happening is they take it and they just dump it. And they don't give you a receipt, while, I believe they are saying that this is liable for prosecution. And if it is, then they should at least create some record of that process, that seizure, right? So no record of the seizure is being created and they just dump it. Can vapers, especially in case when the device is expensive, ask them to deposit in lost and found? Is this something that can be done?
I doubt this. I seriously have a concern about this, that if because you are being confronted with this on the security check. And we all know, and we must appreciate that is quite a sensitive area, right? Now, given by this, like if you will recall, there is a special mechanism and norms for the licensed weapons. Suppose that if you have a licensed pistol and you want to travel with the licensed pistol with cartridge, so there is a norm. So that is not so collection and then delivery something. It is not done on that area where there is an inflow of people passing through the security passage. So you have to do. But if I try to today, or you attempted to ask the CISF personnel deployed there that please give me some receipt and lost and found, he will outrightly deny, because in the AFSEC order there is no mention about that. So the modality to that effect, of course, the advocacy groups like the organization you are heading can ask for that. We can go to the court that in an interim, please make some mechanism, right? But unfortunately, with all my great respect, this type of litigations are being considered as luxury litigation. And why I tell you? Because when the peoples are in queue, for getting in large on bail applications, and due to the heavy backlog at the court's end, even the personal liberty matters are not being addressed. So vaping is something the last priority is going to the court as well. But as of now, coming to your question, I think no, it is not possible. Even if we try it, they will refuse it, because they will not move an inch beyond what has been directed to them in terms of the AFSEC order.
Right. So that is unfortunate.
In the latest order,
one thing I wanted to bring up here is that we get reports from vapers from across the country. So in some instances, they have in fact agreed to deposit it in the lost and found. And perhaps this is why the additional solicitor general himself mentioned it. So if the government itself is saying, in a court hearing in front of the judge, that this is possible, I was exploring or trying to wonder if they can be made to do it, or it's just a discretionary power and you request them, and if they agree. And on this, luxury petition thing, I have a point to make. See, to tobacco kills most Indians every year. COVID in totality killed about 4.5 million Indians. Tobacco every year is killing more than that, right? So it is a lot of lives are associated with it, and of course, I understand this, that there is no sympathy for tobacco users in the country, and it is viewed purely as a choice, that these people are making a choice to smoke or use tobacco in some form, and therefore they should be facing the consequences that come along with it. But that is not the case. People are dependent, they want to quit. In a lot of surveys have shown that over half the population of smokers or tobacco users want to quit but cannot, because it is dependence. So, I do understand, the court's view, but I also hope that, they can be made to appreciate that this is a critical issue. There are people, there are lives attached to it. There are people who are making safer choices, and they should not be discouraged or at least and made to feel like criminals. Just my point of view. I mean, I'm not
You have a
saying-
valid point. Just to add one thing, you have a very valid point, but unfortunately, the reality is altogether different. And now the time has come that we must, somebody must take a call that even to challenge the wires of the act itself. Yeah.
Right. Or also, Samrat, adding to your perspective, which you shared right now, if you were the judge, life would be so much simpler. I just have to say that.
Yeah, seriously.
And for you,
I
just
just
chose
became
the
a
wrong
judge with that
profession,
mistake.
man. I'm telling you, you should have become a judge.
Then
But
I would have
Samrat,
gone and have got the order of my choice.
yes,
At least on vaping.
Another judge hota. If I was a judge, I would be like a very upright judge. I think it would be, if you're wishing for me to become something, I think it would have been better to become a politician, so that a bill like this would have never come in the first place.
no, but an upright judge would definitely, see what we are talking about, would hear us out, and once they analyze that we are speaking science and facts and logic, we're on the right side over here. We're not on the wrong side. So even an upright judge should take a side with us.
So, Samrat, on the point you were raising about some cases the airport authorities may have couriered or put it in lost and found. If you look at the last BCAS notification where they have actually come out with these annexures, and ENDS has been put in annexure 1, one of the things you will notice there are provisions for packaging it and giving it back to the person carrying, the passenger carrying the product to begin with. The problem is, like Farooqji said, in the security hold area, there are these bins, and in those areas where there is a public check going on, there the chances are it goes straight to the bin. It is possible if it is caught in a hold luggage at the hold luggage X-ray place before it's being put into the plane, that it will actually be taken out, packaged, and you will be called, and it will possibly be put into lost and found. So that's going to be a problem. In a rushed airport, it is very unlikely that if you're being caught at the security check, you're getting anything back. And the second issue that if you look at the BCAS order, now if you're flying an Indian airline from anywhere in the world, you basically can't carry a vape. So it's not just an Indian aircraft, an aircraft registered in India carrying VT number, you cannot carry the vape. So you cannot carry the vape in a VT number aeroplane. You cannot carry the vape if you're in Indian airports. So even getting it through friends coming in, giving you the device is going to become increasingly difficult. So for all intent and purposes, what Farooqji said is right. This order essentially defeats the point made by the minister that we are not banning possession, we are not banning usage. Because if you're completely banning all access, then you are banning possession and you are banning usage effectively.
Yeah, that I mean, I get that, and I believe where they have deposited and lost and found have been smaller airports. And how we know this is because we have been asking vapers whose devices have been seized to report to us through a form, and maybe someone can post that link in the chat, so that they can report where it was confiscated, what was confiscated, what happened. So we are getting a sense of what is happening across the country. So also, while majority of the cases are from metros, what we are also hearing is that the officials in the smaller cities, the airport officials, they are in fact taking pride in catching these devices as if some major, disaster has been averted. Uh, and however, there are also these airports where users have been able to convince them, okay, maybe because they're not busy and they have had an opportunity to speak to, the guy, and sometimes they have agreed. So from what we gather, this is completely discretionary. You shouldn't expect this as a norm in any of the larger airports. And my personal request to anyone watching is that do report if your device has been seized to our firm, and we can gather more data and be more aware of what's happening nationally. Over to you, Karan.
Yeah, if you submit what happened with you, if your vape gets taken and you do submit into our information what happened with you, where it was seized, what your discussion with the person who seized it was, it will help us fight this case better, because we want to fight it on science and facts and logics and statistics. And without those information, it is a little hard to fight it. But sticking to the same topic as of right now, Dr. Farooq, if I may, what are your main arguments on your petition against the flight ban? Because the way I'm seeing it, I feel it's like a dead end everywhere. So maybe you could shed some insights on that.
All right. So the main argument, in short, is before the High Court is this: that this AFSIC order, under strength of which, as of now, you cannot travel with your vapes devices, is contrary to the aim and object of the act which itself bans it, manufacturing, etc. And the second is, there are many other limbs of the submissions being made before the Honorable High Court, but this is a base that for any executive rule or any policy which any department or the government authority has to frame or frames, has to be backed by the legislative mandate. You cannot make a rule out of the blue having no legislative mandate. And so the legislative mandate for issuing this AFSIC order banning traveling with the vaping devices, they have tried to link it with the act itself. However, the case is completely different. So we are trying to say to the High Court that, see, what they have done is completely ultra virus, and it is a product of a non-application of mind. This is entirely perverse directions being issued, and therefore it needs to be set aside.
Right, because they've went with the it explodes logic, but if it did really
explode logic is there, that's why I tell you, and I don't know. Then by going by that logic, when I was arguing, I say that please ban your phones as well.
And then the rest of the world hasn't banned it in flights.
Like we go, if you remember, if you have, and I pray that you never, that if you have ever opportunity of going to the operation theater or for an X-ray machine or for an MRI or for a CT scan, so you are literally stripped of everything, right?
Yes.
The same should apply also when you travel to, with airplane.
Right. Absolutely. Unfortunately, I have had the opportunity of going through both X-ray and MRI, but they're not that much fun. Those of you who've not had it, you're not missing out on much.
Right.
But okay, I get that. So coming to the harassment then, which vapers face. Pingle, maybe this would be up your alley a little bit more. What is the legality for fines being imposed on vapers? This 50,000 rupees, 1 lakh jail mein dal denge, 3 saal ka jail hai, gaye tum to bachcho. What is all that about?
These are not fines, these are bribes. Let's be very, very clear. These are extortion, they're not fines. There is no ban on vaping or use by individuals in Indian law. So if any cop, anybody in uniform, anybody not in uniform representing the government is saying this is banned and there is some offense for you using a vape or possessing a vape alone, and you're not being caught selling it or storing it separately as a bulk, in that case, that is a clear case of extortion. There is using information asymmetry and misusing the authority as public servants to extort money from you. Now, what will you do? There are
that was what I was going to come to.
Practical solutions and there are theoretical solutions. The theoretical solution is to insist on a procedure. The theoretical solution, and this is something that I have done several times back in the time as a smoker. I would smoke everywhere. I would sometimes even smoke in areas where some cops believed you can't smoke. Though I have always believed that was wrong law. But whenever they would catch me, I would insist on going with them to the police station. I would insist on being produced before the court the next day. I would insist that every procedure is followed. So what am I doing? I'm essentially effectively destroying the time of that corrupt cop's beat time. That is his earning time. That's when he goes around extorting money. And I am insisting he takes me back to the police station and does process. Now, most people can't do that. We are lawyers. We are crazy thick-skinned. We don't care. We are like, हाँ चल तो चलते हैं. We will have a good time. We will eat. We will drink tea on government money. So that attitude is the most combative attitude you can have. But in reality, what can you do? In reality, the first thing you should do is you should try and complain to the grievance redressal cell of the police in that state. So every state police has a grievance redressal cell. File a complaint there with the cop's name and say that this kind of an extortion was done or an attempt was done. That's one thing you can do. The second thing you can do, it's a very effective tool, has been used in Bangalore before. In some other cases, you can actually tweet the handle of the commissioner of Bangalore police. It has worked, and it has worked like very magically, particularly where such illegal extortions have been tried. There was a time there were allegations that cops in Bangalore were stopping people and going through their cell phone messages. And a tweet was made to the commissioner, and there was immediately steps taken, and that practice or ill practice stopped. The third one, which I think is where AVI can come in, is that we can actually send out RTIs to all the major states where this is happening, asking them under what law they are catching and asking for fines from these individual users. And that response will say there is no such law and nothing like that can be done. Then we can give that out to our members and non-members who are users maybe, and they will then have something on paper, on letterhead of the government saying you cannot do this. That immediately kind of emboldens and enables people to take on the cops and answer them questions or ask them questions. But the first thing is, look, how does extortion work? Why are cops so successful at doing it? And that's mostly because of information asymmetry and because of the fear that, this can result in something else, or there is a stigma about going to the police station. Oh, it's 50,000. Okay, fine. Then I'll pay 5,000 and get off it. And that's the natural instinct of most of us. Okay, if 50,000 is the legal fine, they're telling me it's unlikely I'm going to know what the fine is. In this case, for instance, there is no fine. It is not even an offense. In that case, my first instinct as a common person would be to say, okay, fine, you know what, I'll just pay 5,000 and get out of this.
Yeah.
Is the instinct that you have to resist. Maybe for 6 months, maybe for a year, but if enough people resisted, for just 1 year, enough people start showing and shoving the RTI copy on cops' faces, sooner or later, this will stop. This will become bad business. Deal with cops the way you deal with business. If it's not worth their time, or the attempt to extort is taking too long and is costing them something else, then you're increasing their opportunity cost of extortion. They're going to move on to easier targets.
Right.
I'm saying all this on record. I'm basically making them sound like a racket, but let's face it, they're
No,
the
see,
most
I think, Pingal, what is happening
organization.
is, I think what is happening is that, the cops have come to believe that, this is affluent people. If you have a vape, then you have some money in your pocket which they can extort. And as you correctly pointed out, I think there is a information asymmetry, because they do know that you don't know that this is illegal, right? So, they are using that vape selling and import and all that ban, and
Yes.
they're playing it in a way that, they're making it sound like use and possession is banned, which is not in the bill. And I
Yes.
hope, see, while as Farooq said, the minister has said in the parliament that we do not want to criminalize vapors. They, by not mentioning, clearly in that act itself that use and possession is not banned, they have opened the door for this kind of extortion to happen. So, hazy laws lead to such kind of tactics which can be employed. So, I believe there is room for at least amending it and making it clear within the law itself that use and possession is not good, and then that would completely stop this. But a question I had for you was, is there a law against public vaping as such? Because see, public smoking, there are restrictions on that. Now, does public vaping come under those laws, or is it assumed that it come? What is the legality around that?
So I think on that, it is assumed that it comes under that, because see, the act of smoking or vaping from a public premises perspective is quite immaterial the way the government sees it right now, because the government does not recognize that passive vaping is a non-existent concept. There can't be passive vaping. And the reason why smoking was banned in public places was essentially to protect people from passive smoking. That recognition doesn't seem to exist. And because it doesn't exist, the logical understanding that, oh, I can possibly vape anywhere, including in non-smoking areas, is a conclusion that's drawn. But that distinction is not there. And therefore, I believe that risk will stay, that if you're going to smoke in a non-smoking, if you're going to vape in a non-smoking area, it is likely that you're going to get into trouble. But even then, the fine is never going to be 50,000 rupees. So yeah, then the fines should be same as a smoking fine, because you are basically going after them under bans under the COTPA. You're not going after them under bans under the anti-vaping law. So yeah.
Sure. See, because here I just wanted to say what's happening in other countries. For example, in UK, see, the passive vaping risk. The reason why passive smoking is banned, because it leads to 800,000 deaths annually. I mean, a lot of these deaths are from passive, let's say, house fires and wood burning. They're not directly related to cigarette smoke, but a large number are. So so there's cause for action. There is cause to ban public smoking from public places because it harms others. Passive vaping, on the other hand, has been found to be orders of magnitude less harmful. Public Health England has in fact said that there is imperceptible harm to bystanders, which is why vaping does not come under public smoking laws in the UK. Neither does it in New Zealand and Philippines. When they recently passed a law last year, in fact, went as far as to say that there will be separate areas for vapers to vape, where smokers will not be allowed, so as to protect vapers from smoke. Because you've made a healthier choice, doesn't mean you have to be clubbed with smokers into smoking zones and inhale the smoke which you were trying to give up in the first place. So there is recognition globally. Yes, there is a difference between public vaping harms and public smoking harms, but in India, in fact, none of that is happening. So I think we are quite some distance away from that happening.
But I have a weird, rare case scenario over here. So you just explained that using a vape is not a crime, and we have to fight the extortion attempt. But consider the scenario. See, you can't really you go, if you're going to have a vape mod, you're going to probably buy it from somewhere, right? And there are a lot of raids happening on these shops which are selling it in black and everything. So suppose Pingle, somebody is out there buying a vape mod and they just happen to be there at the wrong time when there is a raid and the shopkeeper gets caught. What happens then? What are the repercussions if one is caught buying a vape?
Again, I mean, the statute defines sell, the statute defines transfer. The statute makes that act of transfer illegal, makes the sale illegal. It doesn't exactly define or make the act of buying offense. But remember, you're now party to a transaction which is illegal. And so even if you can avoid being arrested or being criminally prosecuted, you will still be a key witness in a criminal matter. You will still be embroiled in this trouble. So yeah, that's the problem. Which is why, look, that is where, Mr. Farooq's point is so critical, that finally, if you look at it seriously, the metrics of laws that have been created are completely running contrary to the government's stated position in the House of Parliament, on the floor of Parliament. Because the metrics of laws around us are basically not allowing us effectively to buy. It's not allowing us to smoke vape literally anywhere other than inside our houses. And it is essentially turning vapers into criminals. It is criminalizing vaping. That's the fact. And they're doing it and they're trying to avoid judicial scrutiny by saying, oh, but we are not banning usage. But for all intent and purposes, they're doing that.
Right. And Dr. Farooq, maybe you might have a slightly different approach to this. If somebody does get caught buying a vape mod, do you think there's something which they can do? Or we understand they're stuck in the loop now because they were a part of the transaction, but is there something which they can do to safeguard themselves or protect themselves from what's going to come their way?
So, being a criminal lawyer, I will say that if police is apprehending the seller, at that point of time, the buyer has to be apprehended also. So it is better that even if somebody is selling in India, it is not to buy it because it is illegal. See, as long as the law, because, trying to, how the police works in our country very well, we all know there are thousands of books and judgments being laid. But the point is that if you know that buying something is illegal in the country, and then you attempt to buy the same and you are apprehended, so you have to face the music. Now, this is why, I don't understand, and any sane person, if I am not mistaken, will not understand as to how you can allow uses of vaping by not providing that in the market. There is no sink in this. I don't know how, on what mood the then Honorable Health Minister gave this statement and what was preventing them from even completing banning. So you cannot, and as just Pingle told that if you are flying on an aircraft which is registered in India, even from US, UK, or any other country for that matter, where vaping is not banned, you can't carry. So then you are literally put to a condition to see this is a banned product, don't use it. And there is nothing to assuage, the concerns as of now. So buying is something, which I as a lawyer will say that please avoid buying even if somebody is selling. Number one. Number two, one point I wanted to make on account of that bribery, etc., or that so-called extra legal fine, was that concept which, the point is that given how our police, with exceptions, I also appreciate where they work good, but being a defense lawyer, I have a different picture and other story to say. Now, this is not only, if you will not, please understand the practicalities. If you won't cuff the money, they will say, oh, all right. So you were saying, you were teaching the law to the police that, all right, you were saying that the personal consumption is not banned. All right, I am apprehending you for the commercial deal. You are going to sell that. And then we as lawyers, of course, as with thick skin, we can argue, fight for a normal person. We of course have, will send it, down their spine that what is, oh my God, what they will do. Now they will arrest, they will put a challan, they will present to people. Now you file a regular bail. So for any person, respectable person, right, going to a jail, even for 12 hours or 6 hours, it's a big taboo. We have to understand this. So the entire canvas, the entire gamut in which where the vapors are, only God can save them. Right. Only God can save them in the present scenario. You have a liberty to use, but you can't use. Right. I will. There is a शकील बदायूनी शेर that जहर वो देते हैं और कहते हैं कि पीना होगा, और जहर जब मैं पीता हूं तो कहते हैं कि जीना होगा. So you understand? Right.
So, but if you're, so if you're buying, then you're at that moment of buying, then you are open to a risk, right? I mean, but they can haul you to the police station, like, along with everyone, but they cannot prosecute you as such, right? Like on what grounds, for being a user, you cannot be prosecuted. You can be harassed at that moment, right? From what I'm understanding.
Yes. So there are two
Like,
limbs.
you went to a nightclub which did not have license to stay open beyond a certain time, and the police raids it. They do take everyone along, who's in that club at that time. Even though it wasn't their fault that they they are there, because they are just patrons of that nightclub, and that nightclub was contravening some laws. But then these people are not prosecuted as such, so you can be hauled at that time, but you cannot be prosecuted, or no action can be taken against you. Is that correct?
No, there are two limbs. See, in theory, you are 100% correct, but we have to understand from the practical perspective. There are, see, if you will be able to prove in the course of trial before the court that, see, you were the buyer and you were not aware, so you can't be, and the court in all likelihood will acquit you. But please understand the process. The process itself is punishment. We have to understand. Now, suppose that there is a raid on one illegal vaping shop. Seller is arrested. And with this, with the seller being apprehended, the buyer is also arrested. You are being produced before the magistrate. You file your bail application. Your bail application is decided all that you are the buyer, you have nothing to do, and you are enlarged on bail. Then the entire trial, charge sheet is being filed, witnesses are being summoned, and you have to lead your witness, keep on paying to the lawyers, and in criminal proceedings you have to go to the court. The process itself is punishment, even if you are acquitted, which you will be after a certain period of time. Now, why I will not agree, with all respect, with regards to drawing an analogy with that nightclub and with buying and this, because it is altogether different. Now, if there is a nightclub which is going on beyond the time and something, that is a different thing. Because the statute provide penalty and punishment for the offenders. Here the statute unfortunately is silent. If you see the act, it does not spell out that what will happen if a buyer, and whether a buyer will be criminally liable to be prosecuted in case if he buys that product in India. If you see that act itself, I really, sometimes I ask this question to myself, what was in their mind when they were drafting this beautiful piece of legislation. This is something, there are many loopholes, and sooner or later in the court of law, persons will walk out. But what about the process? That's the problem.
Sure, I got that. The process is harassment in its own.
Yes.
Right. So,
and the problem is, Samrat, the sale itself is not just that the selling is an offense. The act of sale, the act of transfer is an offense. So what Farooq sir is saying is very right, because you are becoming a stakeholder in that act of sale. So you're stuck till you are acquitted by the process, which means.
Sure. See, but let's look at it. Okay, let's not just look at it from a vaping point of view. Let's just look at general tobacco product kind of a situation, right? So sale of pan masala, gutka, loose cigarettes, in fact, is also banned, right? It is prohibited across. But we will never hear about a person buying loose cigarette being taken to, jail or taken to the police station. But it is likely to happen with someone trying to buy an e-cig. So, that's very is in asymmetric application of law. And, in this raids, for example, just I wanted to point out, now they are going and raiding these cigarette sellers or pan shops across the country. They're just raiding them for seizure of e-cigarettes, when the more deadly products like loose cigarettes, pan masala, gutka, then those they are not touching. So the message that is being sent out is that, okay, vaping is more deadlier than these traditional harmful products, which are leading to 13.5 lakh deaths in our country every year. And I think that messaging is completely wrong. When these products are 95% less harmful, they're likely to save the lives of people who are using traditional products and switch to these products.
So Samrat,
just to add one thing, Samrat, this was the actual legislative intent. Otherwise, there was no occasion for the government when it was banning, though we may agree, we may not agree, that is our choice. When they were banning production, sale, marketing, etc., they could have also banned the personal consumption, but they opted not to. Even the minister had gone to an extent to give a statement. Now, but the departments who are, or the enforcement agencies, because like you said, that you will never hear that somebody has been apprehended because he was buying an open cigarette, right? It is perfectly right. You have to see the sample size in this case. Now, even if a 16-year-old boy goes to buy a cigarette near a park, you will find cigarette shops in all that prohibited areas. Policemen takes monthly fees from them to keep them, if they have not a permanent section, they will just put some on footpath and they will sell. So we all know. But as of now, because this has come very right from you, that since a person who is a vapor is deemed to be coming from an affluent class, right? So you can cough up the money. That's the problem. And now they have started
this I think is
linking it with narcotics.
Yeah. So this I think is changing, because of this ban. What we are hearing is that, like we are seeing that 80 crores worth of stuff was seized. Now, if that much is being seized, you can imagine how big the market is. So it is not unexpected, So about 5 years ago, these cigarette sellers, like pawn shops or street side sellers, were not stocking e-cigarettes, but now they are. And the black market, what it has done is there are a lot of disposables. So this problem, by not regulating it, you're turning something which could be a useful tool in reducing tobacco-related death and mortality into something which can become later a problem because it's unregulated market. So instead of working with legal vendors or registered sellers, now you are saying no, the black market takes control of the market, and then how scrupulous are they going to be? So you, rather than working with the legal market, you're saying no, we're giving control to the black market.
Samrat, fundamentally, the issue is exactly what you and Dr. Farooq have both said at various times during this webinar, is that because it is considered an elite product and because that has been somehow established in the minds of the law enforcement, it is being treated differently. So, for example, when we see COTPA saying when we see COTPA saying loose cigarettes won't be sold, one of the consideration that comes up is what will happen to the small vendor. But somehow, currently, when you think an e-cigarette vendor, you're not thinking of that small vendor. You're not thinking of a guy selling chai and loose cigarette on a cycle. And now, in a democracy, when it affects that guy, it's an issue. But when it affects somebody who is not a common man, and that's the perception with the law enforcement authorities, then that's not an issue. That's why that litigation will become a luxury litigation, even if it involves personal liberty or fines, like Dr. Farooq said. And this point of luxury, you'd remember, I won't refer to the case anymore, but in one of our first litigation, we have faced this problem with the judiciary, where we could see that even the judiciary viewed everything as some kind of a luxury, some kind of a hobby.
I think that it is.
इस देश में देखो इतनी प्रॉब्लम है और ये ढीठ यहाँ पे अपनी इलेक्ट्रॉनिक सिगरेट कर रहे हैं.
Yeah, so that is a perception that risk reduced solutions to traditional tobacco use are
that's why we must
always. It's a myth, and I think over time that myth will correct itself. That these products are meant for the common man and they can help an average smoker or even a BD smoker if the government showed some willingness. I will come to a set of two questions, towards the end, and Kanav has some audience questions. Now, see, as I was pointing out, they are going and seizing electronic cigarettes, but they are not talking about pan masala or gutka, which are also banned, or loose cigarettes, which is also prohibited. So, the messaging that is going out is that smoking is okay, vaping is not. And this is being done in some other ways also. So we had one of our members, and this is being reported widely, that they're going.
Samrat, you have been muted, and I did not mute you.
Sorry. So at the security, the vapes were being seized, but they were allowed to carry their cigarettes through. And just as soon as they entered, so the vapes they threw in the bin. As soon as they enter their cigarette shop selling cigarettes, so they cannot vape, but they can smoke in that area. There, someone from the HR staff of a large multinational got in touch with me saying that there is a movement to stop vaping in smoking zones inside offices. So smoking is okay in that place, but vaping is not. Now, what do you have to say about this? Is what is the legality? Can e-cigarettes be stopped from being taken to a place, but smoking would be okay. I mean, I find that ridiculous. But what's the law?
That doesn't make any sense. First and foremost, see, in a smoking zone, the only possible argument people make is that some say, look, in a smoking zone, you're not supposed to bring in anything else like edibles and liquids to drink. But other than that, in a smoking zone, if you're allowed to smoke a cigarette, there is absolutely no reason why you can't vape. First, vaping is not even disallowed. They don't have made distinctions about vaping zones and non-vaping zones. So by that corollary, automatically, where smoking is allowed, vaping is definitely allowed. Yes, one can have an argument saying that where smoking is not allowed, vaping should not be allowed either. That could be an argument. Where there could be two positions saying no, but vaping is different from smoking because the passive vaping doesn't exist as a harmful concept. But where smoking is allowed, there is absolutely no way you can say vaping is not allowed. And that is seriously extra legal. That there is nothing even from the government pointing to that. And I mean, I don't know where that's coming from.
But can they do this? Can they still, like, if somebody is doing it in corporates, private companies where they have smoking zones and they're insisting that you can smoke cigarettes but vaping is not allowed?
See, there have been orders with regards to clubs, for example, clubs as in traditional clubs like a Bangalore club or a United Services clubs that they can have their own dress code. So one of the arguments that one could make, an organization could make, is that we can make our own rules, and so long as those rules are not in violation of some other rule, it is fine. So if I am banning something additional, but I am not allowing something banned, I am well within my rights. That could be an argument, but I think that's again is a stretch. There is literally nothing. During COVID time, you'd remember there were some restrictions regarding even smoking and vaping and everything, but those are now over. So I can't see how this kind of a rule can be made. But like I said, any private organization can make a set of rules internally in their private premises, and that is allowed so long as it doesn't violate the fundamental law of the country.
Right. That's another unfortunate thing for fellow vapers.
So you can't, like right now, if you try to walk into Bangalore club, they'll throw you out.
I'm in Delhi. I'm not going there.
What if it's a
Yeah, I'm
public
telling you.
concert, right? If it's an open concert, like which is being attended by the public, and they're not allowing e-cigarette use, which is causing less harm to bystander people around them, but they're allowing smoking. Can something be done about that?
See, honestly, in a public concert, I am fairly certain they shouldn't be allowing smoking. That's the first thing. Because while it's an open area, it's a large public gathering. But having said that, if they're allowing smoking, they cannot stop these products. And the ban by BCAS is only related to airports. Anywhere else, they can't suddenly start arguing this is likely to explode. Because if you're allowing smoking, you're allowing lighters. And lighters explode without warning all the time. So
I have a quick side question on this same topic. Pingu, this is a quick one. Remotely, I'm just going to talk remotely. Let's say there's an event being organized, which is an outdoor concert, and under the table, let's say a tobacco company has sponsored it under the table. Can then the organizers do something like, don't let anybody take vape mods in, and let's put a stall of tobacco the minute they enter the area? Can that be done? Is that legal?
first and foremost, anything under the table or whatever you're saying, if a tobacco company is sponsoring something in any way, that is illegal. If they're then advertising it, that is even worse. Those laws are pretty clear. So I think the problems there will be of a different degree. It won't be about allowing ends.
My tinfoil hat was on. I'm so sorry. Conspiracy theory, guys. It is not what is happening.
So
it's just coincidental that what I said is what is happening. Okay, so Dr. Farooq, we have a question from one of the audiences. Harshavardhan Sampath wanted to ask, even when you produce a copy of the Prohibition of Electronic Cigarettes 2019 Act, the word transport is seen and interpreted by airport security as contravention to the Act, justifying vape seizure. Using the word transport is banned to seize the vape mods at airports. Could you elaborate on this? What is your take on this particular?
It's that transport is with regards to the commercial uses. So we cannot read any statute or any provision in isolation. It has to be read in conjunction with everything. So that transport is with regards to the commercial, that you can't store, you can't keep, or you can't sell, you can't market, you can't sell, you can't transport, meaning thereby that you cannot take a commercial quantity from one place to other. That is also banned. That will not. So if we apply that analogy, that even the transport is banned, and even in a personal consumption, then if you are, it is not that you can only transport, you will only use transport by aircraft. So if I am leaving my place at Delhi, I'm going to Agra by road, so I'm transporting my vaping device, and then I'm liable to be punished. So that is not the argument that can be made, that just because the transport word is there, so it will amount. So the action of confiscating the devices is justified.
Sure. So
Right.
from what you're saying, just to put it another way, you're saying that the transport applies to commercial use. The way
Yes.
everything else in that act is applying to commercial use, it does not apply to personal use and possession. Because how will you use personally if you cannot carry it on yourself, right?
Yes, that's the point actually.
But
See, we don't know where we are moving ahead with regards to vaping regime in India. This is in completely country. We don't know what is the future ahead. How, because the government, even after they have enacted this law and it became the act, at that point of time, they would have carved out something, like they would have said that, all right, we have 10, authorized centers, government regulated, from where a vapor can buy it. Only that, not you cannot go. I don't know. It is completely in a nonsensical type of a thing without any application of mind, and there must be, I should not say this. All right.
okay. Also, one of our viewers had said, Rishi Rajni had said, I believe the allowance of possession and usage was meant to be for retrospectively legally purchased vapes, with the thought process of criminalizing purchase, preventing owners to continue vaping. So the idea was that whoever's already bought it, owns it, and is using it, they can keep using it. But since they'll phase out, they'll get worn out, or they'll have lived their life, then the new vapes will not be available, and they'll slowly phase it out. Do
So
you think that was
yeah, yeah,
so? Yeah,
that
Rajni,
yes. I'm sorry. Yes.
it sounds like you're right. Dr. Farooq agrees with you over here, and
No,
if
that
that
is
was
no,
the strategy, it worked.
I
You don't.
you see that, in my respectful opinion, that even it is the law, the law has to be read as it is. That is the basic principle of reading any law or a statute, right? So it does not state about any retrospective effect, that whatever devices are present at the date of enactment, they are valid. If you buy it tomorrow, it is invalid. It is not the case. Otherwise, even, there is not any, I have not come across any vape which has a fluid or a cartilage or anything which will go for infinite time, right? So that is not going to affect that. The point is, if that had been so, then the government would have put a special provisions in the act itself. The act is very simple. It's just a very small act. If you see the act, it is that, see, you can't sell, you can't purchase, you can't store, you can't transport, you can't advertise, you can't market, you can't import. It does not say. You can't use. And then, all right, assuming for a moment that government would have said that if you apply everything in conjunction, if you read in harmonization, then personal use is also banned. But then we have a statement of then Honorable Home Health Minister in the Parliament. What was the occasion for the Honorable Health Minister to clarify this position in the Parliament? As simple as that.
I think a
Sir,
moment
Sure, and
he
also
regrets
the
Besides,
Ministry
hearing.
of
Kanad,
Health, the Home Ministry later in writing did mention that the use and possession is not banned. So the
that's
government
correct.
position is pretty clear and
Consistent
on
is that.
paper also about this.
Also,
Consistent.
some
Even
also
in, I'm sorry, even before the Honorable Delhi High Court, they does not say in their counter affidavit, which they have filed, they does not dispute this position that no, personal is also banned. They say, no, it is very hazardous device. You can't carry it. That's it. That's the argument, my way or highway.
Sure,
Whatever
I
I say,
just
that's
want to
the
make
law.
a quick point about unintended consequences of laws. So the government may have sat and in its good judgment have decided, okay, from the day that we ban, there will be an existing market in products, and those products will get used and will be redundant, and then people will stop using. Now, this can happen in fairyland because in practical life,
No,
people are
no,
going
no,
to
no.
resort to the black market,
Well, this
and I
will
do not
Samrat,
see.
Samrat, let me be very clear. Whenever, like Farooq just said, whenever the government intends to have any effect, saying, okay, this is in stock, up to this you can use and no further, they will say so in the statute. There are many examples of this. If the
Yes.
government said so, even without the then health minister's clarification, even without the home minister's clarification, this could not have been the conclusion. This inference that they intended this was the intention that going forward no one will be able to buy, so there will be only the retrospective ones are being regularized. If they want to do that, they will do that explicitly.
Yes.
Now, when read with home ministry's clarification, when read with the health minister's statement on the floor of the parliament, I think it's amply clear that was never the legislative intent.
And even if you, just to supplement what Pingal has said, even if you go with the parliamentary debates, when this bill was, though albeit with very short, but when it was debated, that was not the intent. That whatever the vape devices are existent, they will be allowed to continue, and then henceforth not. So laws has to be read. Any act has to be read, and that's settled. There is no dispute as they exist. So we cannot assume the legislative mandate. The legislative mandate has to be in explicit, clear terms.
Sure, I understand that. What I was trying to say is that the laws should be implementable, and if there is going to be an unintended consequence of a black market being created, then let's not be naive and say that those are unintended consequences, because lawmakers know that this will be the consequence. If you're going to ban it, it's not like these products will disappear from face of India tomorrow. That there will be a black market, and I think there is a responsibility on lawmakers to uh, for creating the black market, because they cannot say it was despite the best intent. You knew that this would happen, and it is something that is happening. The question I had was, okay, now it's going to be 3 years since the ban, and most people who are using devices would have bought it from the illegal market. But does that mean that they do not, I mean, they're liable for prosecution, or they have rights, or the use and possession is still uh, upheld as something that they can do?
To my opinion, yes, they are not liable to be criminally prosecuted. To my opinion, and my limited understanding of law, that they cannot be prosecuted just because they are using, because that has been a consistent stand of the government in clarifying this position. Number one. Number two, with regards to that, if that like 3 years of the ban, and or the consequences of enacting a bad law or bad provision, Samrat, I must tell you that there are many provisions of various laws of which the consequences are very fatal, serious, and that's why the parliament time and again in their own wisdom keeps on amending the law. That's why we have the provision of amending the law. And I think, and I'm optimistic, and we must all be optimistic, that someday down the line they will realize this. Actually, the ticket size is very small. If the government realizes that ticket size is big, and a lot, and if there happen to be come credible data before the government, that lot of, so they might think of regulating somewhere down the line. So what we need to do is to impress upon the government, and it is not going to be an overnight process. We have to continue perpetually doing it. So if not today, let's be optimistic that over a 5 periods down the line, 5 years, 6 years, 10 years, we keep on following up and putting data across the government, persuading them. I think that someday down the line, the laws will be amended. That's what optimism is.
Yes, that is what optimism is. It is a difficult thing to keep up, optimism, especially in such an uphill battle. But we are eternally grateful for this intentional gray area which the government left out in the law, where using it is legal. It is honestly the only reason I've not gone back to smoking cigarettes, and for that I'm grateful to the government. hopefully with due time, our efforts will pay off and we will win this battle, and it will be legal to purchase the newer, better generation of mods as well.
Just add one thing, that it could be intentional, it could be unintentional gray area. And if you ask me, I will rather say I will buy this proposition that it is unintentional. This is rather a slip of mind, and see, the laws are being enacted by the human beings, much like you and me. So,
Right.
so as we said, to err is human, to admit it superhuman. Let them admit it and amend the law.
So even if it was unintentional, I'm grateful it happened. There's a greater power somewhere which is looking after us. And with that, I'm going to remind everyone we've had a long, very fun 1.5 hour session, pretty much, which is nearing an end. So I'm going to invite you guys for any last comments or insights or messages you want to share. You guys, if any one of you has, you can take it up and just share your last final thoughts for today.
Pingal, quick question to you. So what do you think, can happen legally in days ahead? What can be done, should be done?
See, I think I believe that we genuinely have a good chance at eventually challenging and overturning the BCAS position, because I think that is untenable. And like Farooqji said, I mean, you have basically put it along with a whole bunch of other products, but you're not treating like products likewise. You're treating like products in different ways, and that itself could be questioned. Again, my main concern there is that if you look at BCAS's own arguments too at various places, it is that, look, this is my executive order. As long as I've acted within my powers, you, court, will not intervene. And that is the kind of problem that I am expecting. On the overall scenario, I think India has a terrible track record when it comes to handling prohibitory laws. Even if you look at the way they have gone about using COTPA, the way they have gone about framing the laws, it ends up creating extremely poor unintended consequences of policy and law, essentially huge opportunity for extortions, racketeering, and black markets. So I think overall the government, and this is not just specific to vape, as a practice, needs to have a relook at how we are going about wrongly with our prohibitory culture. And maybe we are over prohibiting when it comes to, let's say, vape. We never even gave the chance of regulation. We never even considered regulation as a mechanism of going about things. Whereas regulations have shown better results. Regulations have shown that there can be a regulated, safe market, and you can actually cut down on any black market. So that has to be the way, and that has to be shown to the government, that if they look at their track record, even with tobacco, it is poor. Except for increasing tax collection, it has achieved nothing. So unless the government is going on record to say, hey, my intent was never to save my people, it was only to increase taxes, they have failed. And the reason why they have failed is because of the way they go about legislating on these subjects. And I think that's something that needs to be considered. And the third, which you know better than me, is I think it is very important that at a public level, Indian public, because why is it today that courts and public authorities can act in the way they can? One is the ticket size, like Farooqji said. The second is, in the Indian mind, addiction is a crime. Whereas in the high eyes of science, addiction is a disease. And if we cannot somehow get people to understand that and say, look, these people who are smoking, maybe they got into it by choice at the age of 14 or 16, if that choice is even recognized. But the reality is that today they're addicted. It's a disease. They want to get out of it. And you cannot deny them the access to get out of it. By doing so, you are actually killing them. And that can't be the position of a government.
Absolutely. That point makes complete sense. But sticking to the time schedule, Dr. Farooq, I'm going to have to come to you. Is there any closing thoughts or insights which you would like to share before we end today's session?
I have only one thing to say, that all vapers who want to switch to vaping, who have already switched or want to switch to vaping, they must exercise their constitutional right. It is not possible for everyone to go to the courts, but it is possible to write representations, letters, citing data, not only the general latest, like it's not like a mercy appeal sending to the president, with whatever data they can produce and whatever problems they face to the government. And I'm quite optimistic that someday down the line the government will appreciate this, when they will realize that there is a ticket size who are affected by this particular thing, and they will come up with some suggestions. So it is a time. See, criticizing is always not a solution. You must criticize, but you have to engage. You have to engage. You have to open a dialogue. We know that we are unwelcome there. Nobody is there to welcome us, but we have to find our own way. We have to create a way. We have to reach to the government. We have to say that, look, please appreciate this. One day they will kick you out. No, get out, get lost. Second day, get lost. But over a period of time, without losing patience, if we continue working on this, someday down the line, we will have some good results. That's my thought. This way, I think.
Absolutely. I fully agree with that. I resonate with what you've said completely. It is very important for all of us and every one of us to exercise our right, as Dr. Farooq rightfully said so. If you are interested in standing up, fighting, or supporting us in any which way, please do reach out to us, to any of the AVI members. We will help you. We will tell you how you can help us. And in the long run, we're hoping we'll make a dent big enough that someday we're taken seriously and this law is reversed. In the meantime, we, on behalf of AVI, we'd like to wish Ollie a very happy birthday. His birthday is coming up. He's been a very crucial member of our team and works in the background, does a lot of our work, and pulls a lot of his weight. And Ollie, if you're watching, a very, very happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday, Ollie.
Birthday.
And just to sign off, before signing off, just one or two things which I would like to say. And I've totally forgotten them. So I'm just going to give a blank expression for 30 seconds. I had a very cool outro. I totally forgot my outro. I should have noted it down. But yes, so my outro was something like this. I need you all to remember that when the pandemic started, WHO said it's not a pandemic. When the pandemic became a pandemic, WHO said, A, it's not a pandemic, and B, it's not airborne, guys. You don't need masks. Then, when the scientists said it is airborne and you do need to wear masks, WHO said, oops, sorry, our mistake, please buy masks. If you don't wear a mask, you're an idiot now. Then the WHO said, vaccinate yourself. We've done research. This is the best. Then the study said, oh no, there was no research done. I'm not blaming WHO. I'm not pointing a finger. I'm just stating facts. And WHO also said that vaping is bad. I'm just stating facts again. Take care, guys. Until next time, we'll see you soon.